Hi guys, welcome to book 21. So this is called The Test of the Bow. So something to keep in mind before we start reading, Odysseus is still in disguise. So keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that Penelope has given up and she doesn't think Odysseus is coming home at this point. So anything that the book says that seems like Penelope might know that Odysseus is there and what the plan is, she definitely does not. So just keep that in mind. Upon Penelope, most worn in love and thought, Athena cast a glance like a great sea lifting her. Now to bring the tough bow out and bring the iron blades. Now try these dogs at archery to usher bloody slaughter in. So moving stairward, the queen took up a fine door hook of bronze, ivory hafted, smooth in her clenched hand, and led her maids down to a distant room, a storeroom where the master's treasure lay. Bronze, bar gold, black iron, forged and wrought. In this place hung the double torsion, bow, and arrows in a quiver, a great sheaf, quills of groaning. In the old time, in Lacedaemon, her old lord had gotten these arms from Iphitos, Eurytos' son. The two men met in Messenia at Ortolocos' table on the day Odysseus claimed a debt owned by that realm. Sheep stolen by Messenians out of Ithaca in their long ships, 300 head, and herdsmen. Seniors of Ithaca and his father sent him on that far embassy when he was young. But Iphitos had come here tracking strays, 12 shy mares with mule coats, yet unweaned. And a fatal chase that led him over prairies into the hands of Heracles, that massive son of toil and mortal son of Zeus, murdered his guest at wine in his own house, inhuman, shameless in the sight of heaven, to keep the mares and colts in his own grange. Now Iphitos, when he knew Odysseus, gave him the master's bowman's arm, for old Eurytos had left it on his deathbed to his son. In fellowship Odysseus gave the lance and a sharp sword. But Heracles killed Iphitos before one friend could pay host to the other, and Lord Odysseus would not take the bow in the black ships to the great war at Troy. As a keepsake he put it by. It served him well at home in Ithaca. Now the queen reached in the storeroom door and halted. Here was an oaken sill cut long ago and sanded clean and bedded true. Foursquare the door jambs and the shining doors were set by the careful builder. Penelope untied the strap around the curving handle, pushed her hook into the slit, aimed at the bolts inside, and shot them back. Then came a rasping sound as those bright doors the key had sprung gave way. Like a bellow like a bull's vaunt in a meadow, but followed her light footfall entering over the plank floor. Herb-scented rose lay there in chest, but the lady's milk-white arms went up to lift the bow down from a peg in its own polished bow case. Now Penelope sank down, holding the weapon on her knees, and drew her husband's great bow out, and sobbed and bit her lip and let the salt tears flow. Then back she went to face the crowded hall, tremendous bow in hand, and her shoulder hung the quiver spiked with coughing death. Behind her maids bore a basket full of axe heads, bronze and iron implements for the master's game. Thus in her beauty she approached the suitors, and near a pillar of solid roof she paused, her shining veil across her cheeks, her maid in either hand, and still, then spoke to the banqueters. My lords, hear me, suitors indeed, you commandeered this house to feast and drink in day and night. My husband being long gone and long out of mind, you found no justification for yourselves, none except your lust to marry me. Stand up, then. We now declare a contest for that prize. Here's my lord Odysseus' hunting bow. Bend and string it if you can. Who sends an arrow through the iron axe-helve sockets, 12 in line. I shall join my life with his, and leave this place my home, my rich and beautiful bridal house, forever to be remembered, though I dream of it only. So basically Penelope's saying, you can do what Odysseus did, and I will go and marry you. Then to Eumaeus, carry the bow forward, carry the blades. Tears came to the swineherd's eyes as he reached out for the long bow. He laid it down at the suitor's feet. Across the room the cowherd sobbed, knowing the master's weapon. Antinous growled with a glance at both. Clods, they go to pieces over nothing. You two here, why are you sniveling? To upset the woman even more? Has she not pain enough of her lost husband? Sit down. Get on with dinner quietly or cry about it outside if you must. Leave us with the bow. A clean-cut game it looks to me. Nobody bends that bow stave easily in this company. Is there a man here made like Odysseus? I remember him from childhood. I can see him even now. That was the way he played it, hoping inwardly to span the great horn bow with a corded gut and drill the iron with the shot. He, Antinous, destined to be the first of all to savor blood from a biting arrow at his throat, a shaft down by the fingers of Odysseus, whom he had mocked and plundered, leading on the rest, his boon companions. Now they heard a gay snort of laughter from Telemachus, who said brilliantly, "A queer thing, that. Has Zeus Almighty made me a half-wit? For all her spirit mother has given in, promised to go off with someone, and is that amusing? What am I cackling for? Step up, my lords, contend now for your prize. There's no woman like her in Achaea, not in old Argos, Pylos, or Mecone, neither in Ithaca or in the mainland, and all you know it without praise of mine. Come on, no hanging back, no more delaying, now getting the bow bent. Who's the winner? I myself should like to try that bow. Suppose I bend it and bring off the shot. My heart will be less heavy, seeing the queen, my mother, go for the last time from this house and hall, if I who stay can do my father's feat." He moved out quickly, dropping his crimson cloak and swift sword and sword belt from his shoulders. His preparation was to dig a trench, heaping the earth on a long ridge beside it to hold the blades half bedded. A taut cord aligned the socket rings, and no one there but looked on wondering at his workmanship, for the boy had never seen it done. He took his stand then on the broad doorsill to attempt the bow. 3 times he put his back into it and sprang it. 3 times he had to slack off. Still he meant to string the bow and pull for the needle shot. A 4th try, and he had it all but strung, when a stiffening in Odysseus made him check abruptly. Then he stopped and turned and said, "Blast and damn it, but must I be a milksop all my life? Half grown, all the thumbs, no strength or neck and arms to defend myself if someone picks a fight with me. Take over, O my elders and betters, try the bow, run off the contest." And he took the weapon upright against the massy timbered door with one arrow across the horn, aslant, and then went back to his chair. So Telemachus is making it out like he can't do it, because he almost had it done, and then Odysseus, who's in disguise sitting along the way watching, stiffened up, and Telemachus noticed that, and so then he acted like he couldn't do it. He didn't try any longer, because obviously Odysseus has a different plan in mind. Then the suitors are, of course, going to respond to him. And Antinous gave the word, "Now one man at a time, rise and go forward, round the room in order, left and right from where they dipped the wine." As this seemed fair enough, stood up Leodes, the son of Oenops. This man used to find visions for them in the smoke of sacrifice. He kept his chair, retired by the wine bowl, for he could not abide their manners, but sat in shame for all the rest. Now it was he who had first to confront the bow, standing up on the broad door sill. He failed. The bow unbending made his thin hands yield, no muscle in them. He gave up and said, "Friends, I cannot. Let the next man handle it. Here is a bow to break the heart and spirit of many strong men. Aye, and death is less bitter than to live on and never have the beauty that we came here laying siege to so many days. Resolute are you still to win Odysseus' lady, Penelope? Pit yourself against the bow and look among Achaeans for another's daughter. Gifts will be enough to court and take her. Let the best offer win." With this, Leodes threw the bow away from him and left it upright against the massy timbered door, with one arrow aslant across the horn. As he went down to his chair, he heard Antinous' voice rising. "What is it that you say? It makes me burn. You cannot string the weapon, so here is a bow to break the heart and spirit of many strong men. Crushing thought! You were not born. You never had it in you to pull all that bow or let the arrow fly. But here are men who can and will." He called out to the goatherd, Melanthios, "Kindle a fire there, be quick about it. Draw up a big bench with a sheepskin on it, and bring cake of lard out of the stores. Contenders from now on will heat and grease the bow. We'll try it limber and bring off the shot." Melanthios darted out to light a blaze, drew up a bench, threw a big sheepskin over it, and brought a cake of lard. So one by one the young men warmed and greased the bow for bending, but not a man could string it. They were whipped. Antinous laid off, so did Eurymachus. Suitors in chief, by far the blessed there. The 2 men had meanwhile left for hall, swineherd and cowherd in companionship, one downcast as the other. But Odysseus followed them outdoors outside the court, and coming up said gently, "You herdsman, and you too swineherd, could I say thing to you, or should I keep it dark?" No, no, speak, my heart tells me. Would you be man enough to stand by Odysseus if he came back? Suppose he dropped out of the clear sky as I did. Suppose some god should bring him. Would you bear arms with him as for the suitors? So no one knows it's Odysseus yet. So Odysseus is like kind of picking out an army of people that he thinks would help him. The cowherd said, I'll let the master come. Father Zeus, grant our old wish, some courier guide him back. Then judge what stuff in me and how I manage arms. Likewise, Eumaeus fell to praying all heaven for his return. So Odysseus, sure at least of these, told them, I am at home, for I am he. So Odysseus just told them he is Odysseus. Ah! I bore adversities, but in the 20th year I am ashore in my own land. I find the two of you alone among my people, longed for my homecoming. Prayers I had never heard except your own that I might come again. So now what is in store for you, I'll tell you. If Zeus brings down the suitors, by my hand I promise marriages to both, and cattle, and houses built near mine. And you shall be brothers in arms of my Telemachus. Here, let me show you something else, a sign that I am he, that you can trust. Look, this old scar from a tusk, the wound that I got, boar hunting in Parnassus. Autolycus' sons and I. Shifting his rags, he bared the long gash. Both men looked and knew and threw their arms around the old soldier, weeping, kissing his head and shoulders. He as well took each man's hands to kiss, and then said, to cut it short, else they might weep till dark, break it off! No more of this. Anyone at the door could see and tell them, drift back in, but separately at intervals after me. Now listen to your orders. So here's the plan. When the time comes, these gentlemen to a man will be dead against giving me bow or quiver. Defy them. Eumaeus, bring the bow and put it in my hands there at the door. Tell the women to lock their own door tight. Tell them if someone hears the shock of arms or groans of men in hall or court, not one must show her face, but keep still at her weaving. Philodius, run the outer gate and lock it. Throw the crossbar and lash it. He turned back into the courtyard and the beautiful house and took the stool he had before. They followed one by one, the two hands of loyal to him. Eurymachus had picked up the bow. He turned it round and round before the licking flame to warm it up, but he could not even so put stress upon it to jam the loop over the tip, though his heart groaned to bursting. So they're trying to string this bow. So they have the big bow, like a bow and arrow, and they're trying to take the string and put it up over a latch to make it so that you could shoot an arrow with it. Then Eurymachus said grimly, Curse this day! What gloom I feel, not for myself alone, and not only because we lost that bride. Women are not lacking in Achaea, in other towns, or on Ithaca. No, the worst is humiliation, to be shown up for children, measured against Odysseus, we who cannot even hitch the string over his bow. What a shame to be repeated of us, after us. Antinous said, Come to yourself. You know that this is not the way that business ends. Today is the islanders' held holiday, a holy day. No day to sweat over a bowstring. Keep your head. Postpone the bow. I say we leave the axes planted where they are. No one will take them. No one comes to Odysseus' hall tonight. Bring out the good wine and brim our cups again, and we'll keep the crooked bow safe overnight. Order the fattest goats Melanthios has brought down tomorrow noon, and offer thigh bones burning to Apollo, god of archers, while we try out the bow and make the shot. So they're still going to try. As this appealed to everyone, heralds came pouring fresh water for their hands, and boys filled up the wine bowls. Joints of meat went round, fresh cuts for all, while each man made his offering. Tilting the red wine to the gods, a drink is filled. Then spoke Odysseus, all craft and gall. My lords, contenders for the queen, permit me. A passion in me moves me to speak out. I put it to Eurymachus above all, and to that brilliant prince, Antinous, just now how wise his counsel was to leave the trial and turn your thoughts to the immortal gods. Apollo will give power tomorrow to whom he wills, but let me try my hand at the smooth bow. Odysseus is still dressed as a beggar. So this old beggar is like, let me have a shot at it. Let me test my fingers and pull to see if any of the old-time kick is there, or if thin, fair, and roving took it out of me. Now irritation beyond reason swept them all, since they were nagged by fear that he could string it. Antinous answered coldly and at length, You bleary vagabond, no rag of sense is left in you. Are you not coddled here enough at table, taking meat with gentlemen your betters, denied nothing and listening to our talk, when we have let a tramp hear all our talk? The sweet goat of wine has made you rave. Here is the evil wine can do to those who swig it down. Even the centaur, Eurytion, Peritheos' hall, among the Lamphi, came to bloody end because of the wine. Wine ruined him, it crazed him, drove him wild for rape in that great house. The princes cornered him in fury, leaping on him to drag him out and crop his ears and nose. Drink had destroyed his mind, and so he ended in that mutilation, fool that he was. Centaurs and men made war for this, but the drunkard first brought hurt upon himself. The tale applies to you. I promise you great trouble if you touch that bow. You'll come by no indulgence in our house, kicked down into a ship's bilge out to sea you go, and nothing saves you. Drink, but hold your tongue. Make no contention here with younger men. At this, the watchful Penelope interposed. Antinous, discourtesy to a guest of Telemachus. Whatever guest? That is not handsome. What are you afraid of? Suppose this exile puts his back into it and drew the great bow of Odysseus? Could he then take me home to be his bride? You know he does not imagine that. No one need let that prospect weigh upon this dinner. How very, very improbable it seems. It was Eurymachus who answered her. Penelope, O daughter of Icaros, most subtle queen, we are not given to fantasy. No, but our ears burn at what men might say, and women too. We hear some jackal whispering, how far inferior to the great husband her suitors are. Can't even budge his bow. Think of it, and a beggar out of nowhere strung it quick and made the needle sharp. That kind of disrepute we would not care for. Penelope replied, steadfast and wary, Eurymachus, you have no good repute in this realm, nor the faintest of hope in it. Men who abused a prince's house for years, consumed his wine and cattle. Shame enough. Why hang your heads over a trifle now? The stranger is a big man, well compacted, and claims to be of noble blood. Aye, give him the bow and let us have it out. What I can promise him I will, and if by kindness of Apollo he prevails, he shall be clothed and well equipped. A fine shirt and a cloak I promise him, a lance for keeping dogs at bay, or men, a broadsword, sandals to protect his feet, escort and freedom to go where he will. Telemachus now faced her and said sharply, Mother, as the bow, and who may handle it or not handle it, no man here has more authority than I do. Not one lord of our own stony Ithaca, nor the islands lying east toward Elis. No one stops me if I choose to give these weapons outright to my guest. Return to your own hall, tend to your spindle, tend your loom, direct your maids at work. This question of the bow will be for men to settle, most of all me. I am master here. Ooh. Looks like Telemachus has finally reached his manhood. Standing up, owning the home, taking his place. She gazed in wonder, as in, oh my gosh, my son is actually acting like a man. Turned and so withdrew her son's clear-headed bravery in her heart. But when she had mounted her rooms again with all her women, then she fell to weeping for Odysseus, her husband. Great Athena presently cast a sweet sleep on her eyes. The swineherd had the horned bow in his hands, moving toward Odysseus. When the crowd in the banquet hall broke into an ugly din, shouts rising from the flushed young men, Ho! Where do you think you are taking that, you smutty slave? What is this dithering? We'll toss you back alone among the pigs, for your own dogs to eat if bright Apollo nods and the gods are kind. He faltered and at once put down the bow and stood in a panic, buffeted by waves of cries. Hearing Telemachus from another quarter shout, Go on, take him the bow. Do you obey this pack? Will you be stoned back to your hills? Young as I am, my power is over you. I wish to God I had as much the upper hand of these. There would be suitors pitched like dead rats through our gate for the evil plotted here. Telemachus's frenzy struck someone as funny, and soon the whole room roared with laughter at him, so that all tension passed. Eumaeus picked up bow and quiver, making for the door, and there he placed them in Odysseus's hands. Calling Euryclea to his side, he said, Telemachus trusts you to take care of the women's doorway. Lock it tight. If anyone inside should hear the shock of arms or groans of men or hall or court, no one must show her face, but go on with her weaving. The old woman nodded and kept still. She disappeared into the women's hall, bolting the door behind her. Philodius held the house now at one bound, cat-like, running to the bolt in the courtyard gate. A coil of deck rope of papyrus fiber lay in the gateway. This he used for lashing, and ran back to the same stool as before, fastening his eyes upon Odysseus. And Odysseus took his time, turning the bow, tapping it every inch for borings that termites might have made, while the master of the weapon was abroad. The suitors were now watching him, and some jested amongst themselves. So they're still laughing about all this. A bow lover, dealer in old bows. Maybe he has one like it at home, or has an itch to make one for himself. See how he handles it, the sly old buzzard. And one disdainful suitor added this, may his fortune grow an inch for every inch he bends it. But then the man skilled in all ways contending, Odysseus, satisfied by the great bow's look and heft, like a musician, like a harper, when with quiet hand upon his instrument he draws between his thumb and forefinger a sweet new string upon a peg, so effortlessly Odysseus in one motion strung the bow. Then he slid his right hand down the cord and plucked it, so the taut gut vibrating hummed and sang a swallow's note. In the hushed hall, it smote the suitors, and all their faces changed. Then Zeus thundered overhead, sign, and one loud crack for a sign. And Odysseus laughed within him that the son of crooked mind Cronos had flung that omen down. Then he picked one ruddy arrow from the table where it lay bare. The rest were waiting still in the quiver for the young men's turn to come. He knocked it, let it rest against the hand grip, and drew the string and grooved butt of the arrow, aiming it from where he sat upon the stool. Now flashed the arrow from the twanging bow, clean as a whistle, through every socket ring, and grazed not one, to thud with heavy brazen head beyond. Then quietly Odysseus said, Telemachus, the stranger you welcomed in your hall has not disgraced you. I did not miss, neither did I take all day stringing the bow. My hand and eye are sound, not so contemptible as the young men say. The hour has come to crook their lordships' mutton supper by daylight, other amusements later with song and harping that adorn a feast. He dropped his eyes and nodded, and the prince Telemachus, true son of King Odysseus, belted his sword on, clapped his hand to his spear, and with a clink and a glitter of keen bronze, stood by his chair in the forefront near his father. So now it's game on. Okay? So, and what they meant by socket rings, like if you have an axe and you take the metal part out of the axe, it's the wooden handle, and now there's not the metal part in it, so there will be a hole there. So Odysseus shot, not only did he string the bow, but he shot that arrow through all those socket rings, which is a very small hole. And if they haven't figured out it's Odysseus yet, they know it's someone not to be messed with. So Mr. Weaver will pick up with book 22, which is titled Death in the Great Hall.